The storm wasn't the only thing that hit the ranch that night. A stranger showed up, bleeding, broken, and running from something she wouldn't name. He could have turned her away, but one look in her eyes and the rancher did the unthinkable. By morning the storm had passed, but the hunger between them had just begun. She said, "Hurry up, I crave." And in that moment he crossed the line between loneliness and love. A line that would cost him everything, because when the sheriff came knocking weeks later, the woman he saved was no stranger to sin, and the rancher who swore he'd never love again had a wife he couldn't let go of. This isn't just a story about desire. It's about what happens when you let your heart choose wrong, and love decides to stay anyway. The wind screamed through the valley, carrying dust and thunder across the darkened plains. The night was heavy, swollen with rain that hadn't yet fallen. Elias Ward fought against it, trying to latch the barn doors before they were torn from their hinges. His hat blew off into the mud, and he cursed under his breath, rain beginning to spit down from the black sky. The ranch had stood alone for years, just like him, empty, quiet, a ghost of what it used to be. The land was all he had left after the war, after his wife's death, after everything else had burned or left him. He didn't expect company anymore. Not tonight, not ever. Then came the sound, faint, uneven footsteps on the dirt road. At first he thought it was the storm playing tricks. But when lightning flashed across the open plain, he saw her, a figure stumbling through the rain, clutching her arm, dress torn and soaked through. Elias froze. No one came out here, not unless they were running from something. She collapsed near the fence, her breath ragged, mud splattering her face as she tried to push herself up. He hesitated, one hand hovering over the revolver at his hip. "Who's there?" he shouted over the wind. No answer, just another flash of lightning. And in that split second he saw her face, young, scared, but defiant. Her eyes met his, wild and pleading all at once. "Please," she whispered, voice almost lost in the storm. "They're coming for me." Elias's jaw tightened. His first instinct was to walk away, to let the storm wash her off the land. Trouble had a way of finding him, and he'd sworn years ago that he wouldn't let it in again. But something about her, the way she stood there shaking, the way her voice cracked like it carried a lifetime of running, cut through the armor around his heart. He took a step closer, boots sinking into the mud. "Who's coming?" She shook her head, tears mixing with rain. "You don't want to know." The wind ripped through them both, carrying her scent, rain, dirt, and fear. Elias looked past her into the darkness of the ridge. He could swear he saw movement, the faint shimmer of torches, the sound of hooves pounding somewhere far off. Whoever she was, whatever she'd done, she wasn't lying. Someone was coming. Without another word, he grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward the barn. "Inside now." She hesitated, eyes wide, but he didn't give her time to argue. The doors slammed shut behind them, the storm raging outside like it wanted to break through. She leaned against a hay bale, chest rising fast, shivering under the weight of her soaked clothes. Elias lit a lantern, its glow spilling over her face. Dirt streaked her cheek, blood on her arm, but beneath all that, in beauty. Not the polished kind, but something raw and aching. "Name?" he asked, voice hard. She hesitated, then met his eyes. "Mara." He nodded slowly, jaw tight. "You can stay till the storm passes. After that, you're gone." Mara nodded, though the look in her eyes said she didn't believe it. He turned to walk away, but her voice stopped him. "Thank you," she said softly. Elias didn't reply. He just stood there, listening to the rain pound against the roof, trying to ignore the feeling creeping up his spine. The one that whispered this wasn't just a storm. It was the beginning of something that would change everything. Morning crept slowly across the ranch, painting the horizon in soft gold. The air was cool, heavy with the smell of rain-soaked earth and smoke from the dying fire. Elias stirred in the small wooden chair he'd fallen asleep in, had tilted over his eyes, rifle resting across his lap. He hadn't slept well in years. Too many memories haunted him. But last night, something was different. He heard her before he saw her, the faint clatter of pans, the crackle of firewood being fed into the stove. When he looked up, she was there, wrapped in his old coat, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hair still damp from the night before. She looked too natural standing there, like she'd belonged to this place all along. "Found your coffee," she said softly, stirring a tin pot. "If you can call it that." Elias grunted, trying to hide the pull in his chest. "You didn't have to." I wanted to, she said, glancing at him, eyes full of warmth that didn't match the cold world outside. Then she smiled, small and dangerous. Besides, I owe you a meal. He nodded, saying nothing, but his fingers tightened around the edge of the table. He wasn't used to someone being here. The ranch had been empty too long. She slid a plate toward him, eggs, bread, and a bit of jerky. Simple. But when her hand brushed his, it felt like lightning struck again. The same jolt he'd felt last night when he pulled her from the storm. For a moment, they just looked at each other, no words, just the crackle of fire between them. Then she broke the silence, her voice a whisper that carried something heavier than hunger. Hurry up, she said, almost teasing. Then softer, I crave. Elias froze. The words hit him in the gut. He didn't know if she meant food or something far deeper, something he hadn't let himself feel in years. She stepped closer, the faintest trace of a smile playing at her lips. Her eyes didn't shy away. They invited, challenged. I haven't felt safe in a long time, she said. And right now, I do. Don't make me regret that. Elias rose slowly, his chair creaking against the wood floor. He could smell the smoke in her hair, the rain on her skin. His voice came out rough, lower than he intended. You don't know what you're asking. She looked up at him, unflinching. Then show me. For a heartbeat, time stopped. The fire snapped. The wind sighed through the broken shutters, and the weight of everything they'd lost filled the room. Then Elias did the one thing he'd sworn he'd never do again. He reached for someone. Their lips met, hesitant at first, then desperate. The walls of loneliness he'd built for years cracked, then shattered. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, until there was no space left between them. No past, no pain, just breath and heartbeat. When the fire burned low, they sat in silence. She leaned against his chest, tracing the scars on his arm. You regret it? She whispered. He looked down at her, eyes soft but tired. Not yet, he said. And that's the part that scares me. Outside, the storm clouds broke apart, and sunlight slipped through, touching the land like forgiveness. Inside that old ranch house, two lost souls clung to something neither could name, a craving deeper than flesh, born from the hunger to be seen. Weeks passed, and the valley began to heal after the storm. The grass grew back, greener than before, and the river finally ran clear again. Elias's ranch, once silent and haunted, now echoed with the soft hum of a woman's voice. She moved through his world like sunlight, quiet, steady, and too beautiful to belong in it. He never asked about her past. He didn't want to break the spell. She cooked, mended, and sometimes laughed in a way that made the ghosts in his chest go still. For the first time in years, the ranch didn't feel like a graveyard. It felt like home, but peace in the Wild West never lasted long. One dusty afternoon, the sound of hooves thundered down the path. 3 riders, one wearing a star on his vest. The sheriff. Elias's hands froze over the reins he was mending. His heart sank. The sheriff dismounted, boots heavy on the porch. Elias Ward, he said, tipping his hat, eyes sharp. You've been harboring someone that don't belong here. Inside, she stood at the table, pale as ash. Her hands trembled, clutching the ring Elias had slipped onto her finger just the night before. The small silver band caught the sunlight, a promise she never asked for but couldn't refuse. Elias stepped in front of her. What's this about? The sheriff unfolded a paper. The ink was smeared, but the name was clear. Wanted for theft, suspicion of murder. Her name. Elias's chest tightened. He looked at her. The same woman who'd walked into his life like a storm and calmed it with her touch. She didn't deny it. Didn't speak a word. Just stared back, tears welling in her eyes. The sheriff's voice softened. If you say she's yours, I walk away. You know what that means. The silence that followed felt endless. The wind moved through the open door, carrying the smell of dust and rain. Elias didn't flinch. Didn't think. He took her hand, fingers rough against her trembling skin. She's my wife. The sheriff studied him for a long moment, then tipped his hat again. Guess that settles it. He turned, mounted his horse and rode off, leaving a trail of silence behind. When the last echo faded, she broke down, tears falling fast. You didn't have to do that, she whispered, voice shaking. You don't even know what I've done. Elias reached out, cupping her face. I don't care what you did. I care who you are now. Her lip trembled. And what am I now? He smiled. The kind of smile that comes only from a man who's seen hell and found heaven anyway. My wife, he said simply. Outside, the storm clouds drifted apart. The sun broke through, spilling light over the land. And for the first time, Elias Ward, the man who'd buried his heart years ago, found peace in the arms of the woman he was never supposed to love.